With the leverage you get with options, you might think it's a no-brainer to trade options. You can trade large cap stocks without having the capital to actually buy the stock. They can also be very volatile with huge percentage gains. Buying options have massive potential for gains with limited downside. The biggest curveball in options is called time decay, or theta. Theta is a measure of the daily rate of decline as time passes by. Every day you hold that contract, the extrinsic value will lose value at the theta rate. Now, extrinsic value is known as time value, and theta is the time value depreciator. Think of the last car you bought. Every day that you hold that car, it likely goes down in value. Think of theta as how much value it loses in a day. Theta is typically negative anytime you buy an options contract. For example, if your options contract has $2 of extrinsic value and a negative 0.30 theta, then your option contract will go down by 30 cents by the end of the day if the stock doesn't move. Extrinsic value is the only value that can depreciate. So in this example, the total amount that can decay is $2. Your contract goes down in value as time passes because the chance of the stock going more favorable is decreasing. Theta is a theoretical number. It's not a hard set number, so it can and will likely change from one day to the next. I also want to mention some brokers like Tastyworks actually multiply the theta by 100, giving you the actual theta loss if you owned the contract. So when it says negative 170 in theta, it really means negative $1.70 per contract. Now, there are three major things that affect the theta number: the strike price, the expiration date, and the IV. IV stands for implied volatility. IV is another theoretical number that can and will likely change from one day to the next day. IV will go up when the stock is more volatile or is expected to make a volatile move, and will go down if it is not being volatile and is not expected to be volatile. IV is described in a percentage. An IV percentage over 50 is a relatively high number. I want to give you specific numbers of what a high IV is and what a low IV is, but each stock just moves so differently. And for some stocks, 90% IV is normal. And for others, that's really high for them. For example, if people are expecting a big move for an announcement, the IV will likely be rising because the stock is expected to move huge. This causes the extrinsic value to likely rise, and the theta to rise as well. After the announcement, well, the IV will probably start to go down because it is no longer expected to be as volatile after the announcement has been made. This is one reason it is risky to buy options right before an announcement or earnings, because the odds are actually stacked against you, and you can lose money if the stock goes against you, sideways, or even if it goes in your favor, because the high negative theta can decrease the extrinsic value of the contract so much and so fast that the favorable move might not be favorable enough to outweigh the theta. Next, the theta, or time decay, will also depend on where the strike price sits. If it's in the money, out of the money, or at the money. Typically, the closer the option contract is to at the money, the higher the theta will be. This is also where the options contract will have the highest extrinsic value. The further out of the money and in the money you go, the smaller the theta should get. Something to note is that even though the theta might be lower on the out of the money contracts, it is a much higher percentage of the contract that can decay. For example, if an option contract is in the money and has a theta of negative 1.7 per contract, that contract might cost $44, whereas the out of the money contract still has the same theta of negative 1.7, but the contract might cost $20. So the out of the money contract has a much larger percentage of the contract that can decay. This typically makes the out of the money contract more volatile percentage-wise. The third factor, and one of the most important ones, is the expiration date. An option that expires in 1 day will have a high IV and faster time decay, because the closer the expiration date is, the less time the stock has to move in a favorable direction. This creates more volatility, which in turn usually gives a higher IV. When the expiration date is further out, the option will be less volatile because it has more time for the option to get in the money or stay in the money. In turn, it will typically have a lower IV and won't decay as fast. In other words, there is a higher extrinsic value the further dated you go, but it will move slower because of the extra time. Here's an option chain with multiple expiration dates open. You can see how the theta in this column is much higher on the comparative closer dated calls versus the further out dated calls. You will also notice the extrinsic value, which is in this column, is higher on the further out dated calls and lower on the close dated calls. In general, most traders like the saying, when in doubt, go further out. And a lot of traders like to only trade in the money contracts. This is because of the time decay, and volatility is more manageable usually. It is also usually easier on your emotions, so you can hold onto a position knowing you have time for it to work out in your favor. Of course, every strategy and trader is different. But in summary, theta, or time decay, is the rate of decay of the extrinsic value. There are 3 major components that affect it: the IV, where the strike price sits, and the expiration date. We'll go over more options chains and more vocabulary in the next videos, so I'll see you there.